Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome once again to the D.C.B channel. My name is Zurishaddai. I'm one of the teachers of Congregation of BINAH, CHOKMAH, located in the Red Hood section of Brooklyn, New York. Our address is 382 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11231. Thanking the Creator of heaven and earth for all things and everything, food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And I'm grateful to the mighty King for another day alive. And I'm praying that the Creator of heaven and earth will continue to be with all of us and bless us. Giving glory to the Most High King for being our God and our protector even in these times, and grateful for life as a whole. Thanking the Creator of heaven and earth for all things and everything. So, hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Giving due respect to the leader of this congregation and the spiritual leader, Chief Prince Yeriel Ben Yissaskar. May the Most High God be with him and his family and bless them. Be with his Yeladim and protect them. Thanking the Creator of heaven and earth for all of our brothers and sisters who will be listening to this stream. Pray that the Most High God is also with you and protect you and guide you. That the Most High God will heal you of any maladies that you might have, and that the Most High God will strengthen you and keep you sane and intact. So at this time, we're going to go over the Haftarah for Wayeshev, which is going to be found in the book of Amos chapter 2, starting from verse 6. And once again, to explain it and to review the Haftarah, there will be no other than one of my mentors and one of my teachers, Nasik, Zurishaddai ben Yehudah. How are you, Nasik?
Great, Baruch Hashem. First of all, I'd like to give praises to the Supreme Eternal Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, and due respect to the platform on D.C.B platform, the Chief Spiritual Leader, Chief Prince Yeriel Ben Yissaskar, and also to the host, Chief Uziel, and to the Prince's Chief brothers and sisters, Rabbis, Kohanim, Maureen. I greet you in the tongue of my forefathers, Shalom Aleichem. And I know when most of y'all be watching it, it'd be just before Shabbat, so early Shabbat Shalom. And also, since I'm doing it today, which happened to be on a Sunday morning, tonight be the first lighting of the candle of Hanukkah, so which Chief Uziel has expounded on so greatly in yesterday. So I wish you all, happy and good Hanukkah, those that deserve. First of all, I'd like to also say, once again, I'd like to say, Adonai Septai Jita Kufi Yagi Tilateaka. Oh Lord, my lips, I should declare that praise. We're going on over the Haftarah of Wayeshev, and I'd like to just go back into the actual Sidra and just bring out some points that I find is very interesting to me and as an individual, and what I like about being from the camp of Beni King is that Genesis, like I say often, has so much family problems and so much family education that you can learn from this. And sometimes it don't happen in one generation. Sometimes it don't happen in two generations. Sometimes it may be 3 or 4 generations before the family finally smooth out and get it right. But right now I'm going to the Sidra, which starts Genesis, the 37th chapter of Genesis, and it goes to the end of the 40th chapter. I'm just going to bring out a few points here and there, but I'd like to start up in with the word Wayeshev, which means and he dwelt or he settled, and the word Yoshev, which is sitting there. And as I said earlier, one of the things is that when the other patriots, Abraham and Isaac, they constantly was on the move. And now you hear about somebody actually settling like everything is over with. Everything is okay. So, and we already discussed the point about last week he had some troubles in Shechem. So now he figured that since that trouble was supposed to be over with, as you would think, in his life. But Jacob had a lot of issues that's going on in the family. So I like to bring out some things, because one of the things I like about the scriptures, and especially our scriptures, is that we never, ever color our patriarchs or our matriarchs as being without flaws. We don't make them superficial. We look at them as real human beings that have some exceptional qualities that we, as being their descendants, and if you're not the descendants, being one that's trying to pursue a godly course, a divine course, would try to emulate. So I'm going to start from the beginning of the 37th chapter of Genesis. And it says, and Jacob dwelt in the land of his father's sojourning, in the land of Canaan. And these are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, being still a lad, even with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought evil report of them unto their father. Now, I just want to stop there and bring out a couple of things. There's two things that strike us off when he's selling. All right. When they talk about the generation of the Yaakov, why they just talk about Joseph and as a name? And we know from history, we know who the sons of Bilhah, and we know the sons of Zilpah. We know those who they are. But yet, when we talk about these are the generations, the future, that means already we get a sign that Yaakov looked and put a lot of stock in this one individual guy out of all his children, which is Joseph. Because if these are the generation of Jacob, and then they talk about Joseph, and he's 17, and he's next to the youngest, that's just already something that we should consider. And then when it says he was feeding the flocks, was feeding the flocks, that means he's actually got hands on with his brethren, being still a lad. So he's actually working. So most people would think that he don't actually work. He actually doing some work as well. He's like a unique son, and as we find out, a favorite son. But what is even more stronger that I want to point out is that, and Joseph brought evil report of them unto their father. Now, a lot of people say, well, one, he's a tattletale. That's what everybody agree on. But what most people may not agree on is that the report he brought to his father, was not necessarily true. I'm one of the people that would think that the report he brought to his father was not necessarily true. So some people could talk about you and bring out, some bad news concerning you, but it might be only from their perspective, but that don't mean it's true. And so we don't read anything else what happened, because if it was an evil report, it seemed to me it should be addressed, but it was not addressed. And so I like for people to hold that thought and then even discuss it amongst your teachers even further. And then the third verse said, and now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age. Well, Benjamin, we know, was born after that. And he made him a coat of many colors. A katana pasim. Pasim is more like, I don't know if you can see me good, but it's more striped, different colors, more stripes. So it's a multicolor of stripes. And that's pretty much why I wore this today, just to try to bring out a certain idea. Being a shepherd, you usually don't be flashy. All right. Also, now, this is the first time you read about a garment having diverse colors in it in the scriptures. And we know that according to ancient tradition, there was always somebody of esteem that wore a garment of many colors, because it takes time and it's not something that you actually do or wear on labor, which is strange because the priest garment had quite a few colors in it as well. and even gold in it. But his is used on the job. But the kind of the garment that coat that Jacob built made for Joseph, and he said he made him a coat specially. He didn't say he made anybody else a coat. Made him a coat, and it's a unique coat. All right, so I just want you to consider, now you got things that brings out certain animosity. And I'm just going to read a little bit more. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak to him peacefully, could not speak peacefully unto him. Now, I just want to bring out this here. Jacob never said he loved them more. We're reading this from the book, from the writer. And we, accredited the writer as being Moshe Rabbeinu. All right. What we really find is that children can watch how you treat the next individual. And I said before in my talk, when we were talking about parenting, that you don't treat every child that you have the same. You treat every child you have uniquely. What's special for this one? What's special for that one? This is what this character called for, and so I need to act and do this for this particular child. See, and children will recognize the differences, because sometimes, people just don't want to look the same like the next person. They want to have their own identity. So, but the thing is that you made him stand out, one child stand out from the other, and they could see from what you did. And the type of coat it was in the East, that mostly leaders and chiefmen had that kind of coat, that traditionally that they saw, not that you told them, but we read how Yaakov feel right here. And they couldn't speak peacefully. Now, that's another unique thing I like to bring out, because there's a lot of issues in here. If you don't have anything good to say to somebody, then it's best not to say anything. Some people look at that as, all right, they're so stuck up, they won't even speak. But it's better they not to speak instead of being condescending or slanderous in their speech. That's why they know that they're caught up in their feelings with hate. But they have a certain amount of control that they say, look, I'm not going to even speak to him peacefully. All right? I cannot speak to him peacefully. So I'm going to avoid the conversation. So we don't read where they had a bunch of argument back and forth. All right? Now, here's one more thing. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. That's why I said they hated him more for the dream. And he said to them, here I pray you this dream. So we know about the dreams and everything like that. So I'm not going to go through the whole dream thing. I'm just going to highlight a couple of points that I like to for the people to bear in mind. Is that Joseph had 3 dreams. The first dream, we don't know what it was. And they didn't like it. Whatever it was, they didn't like it. The brothers didn't like it. And then he had these other 2 dreams. And one dream dealing with actual wheat, as we know. And so they know that Joseph also will work. And that's why I wanted to bring out about he was feeding the flocks with the rest of the sons of the handmaids. So he actually did some work himself. But in his dream, he had 12 sheaves of wheat that's bound, and then we know the first dream that we read about that's explained. Remind you that it's explained, because the first dream, we don't know what that was. But the first dream we read about that is explained. It's about the wheat, the bundle, and how they gather around him, and that, they paid obeisance to his bundle. But they all put in work. And I want you to bear that in mind. Then the next dream, we read about the sun, the moon, the stars. But one of the things we read about is that when he brought the last dream that he had, he told it not only to them, but he told it to his father, and to his brother. And his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream that thou hast dreamt? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down to thee in the earth?" And his brethren envied him, but his father kept the saying in mind. So the word it uses, when Shemayah, which is observe or guarded, is saying like, all right, this is subject to come true. But how? Which way? I spoke earlier about the difference between dreams and visions. And most prophets had visions as opposed to dreams. So one of the things is that if you observe the saying, he thought about it, but he diffused some of the tension, because people could see tension. Remind you now, the brothers ain't speaking and talking about how much they hate him. All right. Esau said certain things in his heart, but people could see that. Yaakov seen the countenance of his father-in-law. He heard what the son said, but the countenance of his father-in-law, he recognized that and say, this is not a good look. So Yaakov could perceive and look, and you can see when somebody really don't like you without saying some things, really don't gravitate to you just from a look. All right. So he kind of quelched the argument. But one of the things is we know that Yaakov, the brothers going in, feeding sheep in Shechem, a place where they just created some havoc and wiped out people. And then, but what's interesting, I'd like to bring out some interesting facts right here in the same chapter. When his father sent him to go to check out what the brothers are doing, and said, "Go now, see whether it is well with thy brothers and well with the flock, and bring me back word." He's only want to see if it's okay with them. That's it. So he sent them to the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a certain man, from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. All right. Now, it never said Joseph was lost. So how do a man find him? And who is this man? We don't know who the man is. He's unidentified. But I want to bring out some other points in here. It says that, and a certain man found him, behold, he was wandering in the field, and the man asked him, saying, "What seekest thou?" How you know he's looking for something? And he said, "I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they are feeding the flock." How do you know the man know your brothers? Information is missing. And the man said, "They are departed hence, for I heard them saying, let's go to Dothan." And Joseph went after his brother and found them in Dothan. All right. So he went further. Dothan is not a short distance from Shechem. All right. So we got a lot of missing pieces in this here dialogue. All right. And then, he never asked who the brothers is. They never asked who Joseph is. And he gonna tell them where they at. So now it's a lot of questions about who is this guy? Who was the man? Was he an angelic being? Some people believe that might have been an angelic being. Other people say he's just a regular man. But what everybody can agree on, whether you believe it's an angelic being, when the messengers of God, like Yaakov's encountered messengers of God, or another human being, we both and everybody can agree on that it was a human with a divine mission and divine, information. So that we all can agree on, just from judging and looking from what information we're given here. All right, and his name is left, we don't have no identification of who it is or what it is. And then say, and they saw him afar off, and before he came unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. All right, and they said to one another, "Behold, this dreamer cometh Come down, therefore, and let us slay him and cast him into one of the pits. And we will say, an evil beast has devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. All right. Then Reuben heard it and delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not take his life. And Reuben said unto them, shed no blood, cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, but lay no hand upon him, that his father. So imagine, there's a lot of questions that come up. I'm not going to focus on that now because other people brought out. But what we should ask, if you hung out with the handmaid children, and Reuben wasn't down with the killing them, and Benjamin wasn't with the pack, then how's, it seemed like it should be almost close to an even Steven thing. Because, Joseph wouldn't be about destroying himself or killing himself or doing harm to himself. But those are questions that, you should discuss more amongst your different teachers. I just want to bring out some points there. And let's go just a little bit further. And we know that he took his coat, when they laid hands on him, they took his coat. And that's the first thing to do, snatch the coat off. All right, strip him of his garments. We have similar thing that goes on in our history, but you could tie the dots later. And then we know we throw him in the pit. They throw him in the pit, and then they know later on that that some Ishmaelites came by. Reuben was going to come back to try to bring him back secretly to his father, but Judah come up with a good idea that he thought at the time. And what it was that says, and they sat down to eat bread, and they lift up their eyes and look, and behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels bearing spicery and balms, laden, going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said to his brethren, what profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hands be upon him, for he is our brother, our flesh. And his brethren hearkened unto him, and there passed by Midianite merchants, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. All right, the reason I want to go to that part, because that's going to be part of the Haftarah reminder. But one of the things is, as I'm going to skip through that, is that they still, after Reuben calmed them down from killing them in the first place, they still had death on their mind for their brother until this caravan happened to come by on their way down to Egypt. So we got a whole lot of information there. And Yehudah said, they're not worried about whether the guy live or die. Said, let's sell him. We just ain't going to kill him. We're not going to put our hands on him. But if he die, he die. Because he is our brother, so we're not going to kill him. So we don't want to repeat what Cain did to Abel. So if somebody else kill him, that's all well and good. Because one of the things about being sold into slavery and to a strange nation in ancient times is that your life is not guaranteed you. And that's one of the things in the ancient world. If you're sold as a slave, your master could do what he wants with you and get rid of you at any given time. All right, so those are something to bear in mind. So, when he brought it back, then, I like to bring this last little point in. All right. And they sent, the 32nd verse is that, and they sent the coat of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, this have we found. Know now whether it is thy son's coat or not. And he knew it, and he said, it is my son's coat. An evil beast had devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn in pieces. And Jacob rent his garments and put sackcloth upon his loins and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, nay, but I will go down to the grave to my son mourning. And his father wept for him. All right. Now we know right then and there, one of the most important points I like to bring out in this here portion is that they asked him a question. He answered in the affirmative. They was going to say a beast tore him, but we never read where they said that. And they sent the garment. They didn't bring it because they should know and recognize, is this my brother's garment or not? Much as you hate it, you should recognize that. So it's a lot of details that sometimes we might gloss over in the story. All right, I just want to pass on that he was sold into a certain household, Potiphar down in Egypt. But before we get into that, I just want to bring about the Judah story, because I hear so much different things about Judah, the tribe I tend to, identify with. And it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren and turned to a certain Adulamite, whose name was Hirah. And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. All right. And he took her and went into her, and she conceived and bore a son. So we know he had 3 sons. All right. And then we know the daughter name was Tamar. All right. We don't know really what the wife name was. All right. All right. But yet we know the daughter name was daughter-in-law was Tamar. All right. And you read that God killed his firstborn son, because he was wicked in the sight of the Lord. Whatever that wickedness was, we don't know. We know that the second son that went into this daughter-in-law was wicked, and of course he was like greedy, because he's supposed to raise up seed, which is ancient formula, which is part of our law. For the brother, they had no children, but that has to do with property and inheritance. So when he realized that, he spilled the seed to the ground, so that means he's greedy. So that's our Lord explains a lot of stuff, and we can see the characters of certain people. And so, we know the story that he was killed by the Lord, and Judah didn't want to give up his 3rd son. So he told her, go away to her father's house, all right, and be there. All right. So now, when we go into the 12th verse, it says, in the process of time, Shua's daughter, that's why we said we don't know what his wife's name, the wife of Yehudah, died, and Judah was comforted and went up to the sheep shearers to Timnah, he and his friend Hirah the Adulamite. Now, I just want to bring out just a couple of things here before, as I'm glossing over, is that he was comforted, where his father wasn't comforted for his son, he was comforted for this woman. It's strange that we don't know her name. We know about the 2 sons that died that he had through her. The 3rd son is saved out the deal, and out that tragedy. But one of the areas is that, how do a man be that really comforted right away if he really loved his wife? So there's a lot of other stuff going on with that situation, just for discussion purposes. And that we know that during the time of sheep shearing, that he went Yehudah wound up meeting his daughter. All right, and of course he refused to give him his 3rd son, which is agreement. Everybody know that. So I'm just going to pick it up from the 15th verse, and that's 38th chapter. When Judah saw her, he thought her to be a harlot, for she had covered her face, and he turned unto her by the way and said, come, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee, for he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, what wilt thou give me, that thou mayest come in unto me? And he said, I will give thee a kid of the goats from the flock. And she said, wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it? I mean, you need collateral back then. And said, what pledge shall I give thee? And she said, thy signet and thy cord and thy staff that's in thy hand. And he gave them to her and came in unto her, and she conceived by him. And she arose and went away and put off a veil from off her. So she disguised herself. So Yehudah didn't recognize her. And that's second time you read about a veil in scriptures. All right, but one of the interesting points is that when Yehudah, sometimes we commit a crime or commit a sin and we become so ashamed, and you say, well, look at you, take care of that for me, handle that. So you send somebody else to handle that. But she wasn't there, you know, he couldn't find a woman. But what's interesting is that the 22nd verse, it says, and he returned to Judah, and he said, I have not found her. And also the men of the place said, there have not been no harlot there. And Judah said, let her take it, lest we be put to shame before I send this kid, and thou hast not found her. All right. What's the we? How could we be the shame when you did the act? But that's something to discuss even further. But what I like to bring in this part before we skip on through is that when he found out that she was with child, then what we find out in here is that when we get down to the 25th verse, it said, before we get to 25th verse, just one line above says, when he found out she was a child, Judah said, bring her forth and let her be burned, because he heard she was with child, because they said she played the part of a harlot. And when she was brought forth, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, by the man whose deeds are, am I with child? And she said, discern, I pray thee, whose are these, the signet and the cord and the staff? And Yehudah acknowledged them and said, she is more righteous than I, for as much as I gave her not to Shelah, my son. And he knew her again no more. Now, I'd like to bring out some important points, because I hear so many different viewpoints on there, just like to share this one, is that Yehudah himself, she sent the signet. She wasn't there and said, this is yours. She sent it while she's going to get capital punishment. And whoever it was brought it there in time to explain who she, this is our message to her father, and said, this is who she's pregnant by, the guy that owns these. Yehudah didn't have to acknowledge it because he never seen her face. And he could have said, anybody could have made a signet like that, a staff like that, a cord like that, or it could have been stolen. He could have just lied. But he acknowledged that. So whereas he showed a difference of change, because whereas he was willing to plot to kill his brother Yosef, and he is willing to deceive his father, when it came to this woman here that he got deceived by and said she's more righteous than I, it's only in the area of I broke my promise. And she was promised certain things. So she did what she did to try to raise up seed in her family, my family. So I'm sure I get a lot of, feedback in this area, but so it wasn't about she had more integrity than Yehudah, because Yehudah showed a great amount of integrity when he could admit that he was wrong in one instance. And he also admitting that he was wrong, he saved another human being's life. Whereas before he was willing to take a life, but made a profit off it, he saved a human being's life because it's only his testimony that saved her. Now, mind you, the kingship, the Messiah, the Messianic line, gonna come through that union, that particular union. All right, we know she had twins in there, and whatnot. And one of the twins, named Perez, another one named Zerah. And we know about the scarlet thread, but I'm not going to speak on that much. I just want to bring out some things for other people to discuss in reference to the twins, because this is the second time that the word twins is used in scriptures, And since it's the second time that twins are used in scripture, the spelling is a little bit different. And it's there for a reason. All right. So now we get back to the story of Joseph. And you say, well, why these two parallel stories back to back? It's centered around two major guys, Joseph and Yehudah. And when we center around those two major guys in scriptures, Joseph will be later on in history the leader of the northern kingdom, and Judah will be the leader of the southern kingdom. And we know the kings mostly will come out of Yehudah, but the first king came out of Benjamin, which is a descendant of Jacob and Rachel. All right, so when we look at the differences, you know, Joseph stayed down in Egypt, worked the season, handsome guy. But I like to bring out something that's important here that I find that's really unique. And say, and the Lord was with Joseph, and he was prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did prosper in his hand. What I find that verse to be so important in the 39th chapter, you know, going from the second verse all the way to the second and third verse, is that the master of the house seen God was with Joseph. Joseph didn't see God was with him. Joseph was prosperous because the Creator made everything he did prosper. Not that he had this unique skill, mind you. And so a lot of people think that Joseph had this, you know, great skill to be able to do this and do that and everything like that. When the Creator works through you and you have, you know, a vision, God will make the provisions. So Joseph was able to do things that he never did before, simply because the Creator made it turn out okay. And that's how the master see. And how could the master see that God's with them? Simply because the method that he would go about to do something may not have been the normal way of things should be done. And they say, well, how did this turn out okay like that? It's like several ways you could tie a shoe with shoestrings. But in some ways that you say you're just going to mess around and make knots. So the master looking at Joseph and said, the way he's doing this, and it still turned out okay, it has to be only the power of the Creator. But Joseph can't see that. The next instance, you know, we know he got, he looked it good. He was, you know, they talk about how beautiful he looked. We know that already. And, you know, when we get down to the sixth verse, and then near the end of the sixth verse, you know, and said, and then Joseph talking to the wife of his master, and Joseph was a beautiful form and fair to look upon. I mean, and so, and in the seventh verse said, and it came to pass after these things, his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. But he refused and said unto his master's wife, behold, my master having me, knowing not what is in the house, and have not put all that he hath into, and have put all that he had into my hand. He is not greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. All right. And then said, how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? It ain't about how you feel. It's what God's position on matters. A lot of times we will judge a matter about how we feel and what's going on, tit for tat. But it's how God deal with the matter, you know, and how God would want us to deal with the matter that we should be concerned with. So when talking about him beautiful, that means his father had to be a handsome guy. But when we read about beauty of an individual, and far as beautiful for a man's form, this is the first time you read about a man being beautiful in scriptures, which is something uniquely to be, you know, think about. But do you think he was more beautiful than Adam? That's something to consider. Because Adam was designed by the Creator. So in a form of a man that's designed, made, and form of the dust of the ground, Adam beauty will never be surpassed by any other man's beauty. So if we talk about how beautiful Yosef looked, then imagine how beautiful Adam must have looked when he was made by the Creator. That's something to consider when we get to, that, and being he's the first man that's mentioned by beauty, because it wasn't common and it wasn't exceptional that you would see certain guys. And his beauty is mentioned only in reference to being outside of the holy zone, because then they're looking at the outward part of the individual instead of the inward part of the individual. Most of the brothers understand that, and then some women's too as well. All right, but we know that he didn't lay with her according to the story. Those that read the story, I'm not going to go through the whole story. He didn't lay with her at that time, and she tried to bring up some charges on him. And long story short, we know the story that when she told her husband and stuff like that there and called him a Hebrew and said that what he did, then that means right then and there that he should have been put to death, but he wasn't. They have a story where when he went to court, this is a story, a Midrash story, that he went to court when he was going to kill him, that they say somebody in the courtroom, some might say it was an angelic being, whatever it was, said, which way is his clothes is ripped? Is it ripped from the front or ripped from the back? Because it makes a difference. If it ripped from one side, that means she was trying to get him off her. If it ripped from the other side, that means she was trying to get away. And when they examined the coat, it was ripped from the side where somebody was getting away. Well, I'll leave that for you to discuss. And I left that out on purpose. So that's why he was put in jail, in a prison. And he was put in what you call the upper crest jail, where all the king's prisoners go at. Now, I said when I taught this before that it's not a 7 to 15. It's not a 25 to life. It's when anybody think about you, you coming out. And if they don't think about you, you die right there. So here it is that he stripped of his coat by his brothers. He stripped of his garment by his master's wife. He's thrown in a pit by his brothers. He's thrown in a hole, which is they consider a dungeon, by his master. That's something to consider as we go forward. All right, and next thing you know, I like to just go through when he was inside the prison, and let me see what I was skipped through. Just a moment. All right, and when he was put in a prisoner, it goes on. Let me just back it up just a little bit in that same chapter. 21st verse of the 39th chapter. All right. It says, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him kindness unto him and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prisoner looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with Joseph, and that which he did, the Lord made it prosper. Again, the keeper recognized, that God's with him, because God showed him favor in that sense. But Joseph just don't see God working with him at this particular time. And one of the things is, no matter what, in prison, how are you going to be responsible for a bunch of criminals? That's a serious responsibility. You're a criminal. You're not free. The other guy's getting paid to do his job, but you're doing his job, and you over it, and anything they did wrong, that which falls on you. Now that's a serious responsibility. It's almost like a setup, I would think. But Joseph, the Creator's with him, and he was doing okay, in that sense, and he was prospering. But the 40th chapter, I'd like to just bring out this last little point here. And it came to pass after these things that the butler and the king of the king of Egypt and his baker offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth against the two officers, against the chief of the butlers, and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guards into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. You say bound. You say, what do you mean by bound? If he walking around and in charge of everything. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph to be with them, and he ministered unto them, and they continue a season in ward. That means a whole, that you got it almost a year. A season, basically, you know, at the shortest, you could say, okay, they're only talking about basically 2 seasons in ancient times. You're talking about, you know, the spring, summer, that's all considered one season. And then the fall, the winter is considered another season. So when we talk about Joseph and you know, they continue a season, they're in there for a while. And then we know about the first birthday that's mentioned about Pharaoh's birthday. But before we get to that, it said, and they dream a dream, both of them, each man has dream in one night. And each man according to his interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker, the king of Egypt, who were bound in the prison. And Joseph came unto them in the morning and saw them. And behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his master house, saying, wherefore look ye so sad today? And they said unto him, we have a dream. We have dreamed a dream, and there's none that can interpret it. And Joseph said unto them, do not interpretation belong to God? Tell it me, I pray you. And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph. All right, I'm going to just move on just a little bit from that before we get into the Haftarah. I'm just going to say a few words and people go over and check it a little thoroughly. Is that when Joseph in prison, everybody going to look sad. Everybody going to look destitute. You rarely going to get a person in their right mind in prison enjoying prison. So now what is unique is that is Joseph in a place that he didn't want to be. It said he was bound there, though he had authority. It still said he was bound there. But as low and as bad as he felt by his condition, he was concerned about somebody else's condition being worse than his. So a lot of times people say, I don't want to be bothered. I got problems of my own. A godly individual with some God essence in them will say, I don't want to be bothered. I got problems of my own. So, well, perhaps I can help you with your problems, because I need help with my problems, but perhaps I can help you with your problems. Because some people figure if you got problems, you can't help them with their problems. But Joseph had problems, and he's able to help somebody else that have problems with their problems. All right. So we know we interpret the dream, but one of the things I like to bring out in the dream, you know, one was favorable, one wasn't favorable. We know the butler was restored, and we know that the baker was, you know, hanged. But we know one thing in the dream: the butler was doing his job. The baker was not doing his job. The butler, you know, is only responsible for so much. A baker is responsible for everything he do in baking. All right, so I throw those out there for us to analyze the situation of the dream, not just because of the interpretation that was given that we know, looking hindsight, but also looking into the dream itself. All right, and I will revisit the other 2 dreams of Joseph next time, but I'm going straight into the book of Amos, which is an interesting thing. But before I read about the book of Amos, I'm gonna read about how much problems he had dealing with the children of Israel. So the book of Haftarah Amos, which I'm gonna go through kind of swiftly, is taken from the 2nd chapter, the 6th verse, and it goes to the 3rd chapter, the 8th verse. But before we get into that, I just want to read in Amos 7:14. Go to the 7th chapter of Amos and 14. Just read a line about how hard things were for a prophet, and then we could get a little bit better understanding of the message that can be conveyed in the book of Amos, who happened to be teaching at the time of Jeroboam II, around 784 BCE to 748 BCE. You know, when the northern kingdom was taken into captivity around 721, 722, BCE by the Assyrians in captivity. All right, but let's go. The 7th verse. I just want to go from 7th verse to the 14th chapter, and it's when Amos. Matter of fact, I'm just going to go from the 12th. Just read the 12th, and it says, also Amaziah said unto Amos, O seer, go flee thee away unto the land of Judah, and there eat bread, and prophesy there, but prophesy not again any more at Bethel, for it is the king's sanctuary, and it is a royal house. Then answered Amos and said to Amaziah, I was no prophet, neither was I a prophet's son, but I was a herdsman and a dresser of sycamore trees. And the Lord took me from following the flock. And the Lord said unto me, go prophesy unto my people Israel. Now therefore, hear thou the word of the Lord. And that's all. So we're going to go back to the point. Now, that's after we read this other stuff, how hard a prophet had. So, and I brought that part out to let you know that people don't want to hear a word from the Creator, even back then, especially when they don't want to see themselves doing wrong in there. And they don't want to hear about the calamity, because it's best to hear about the calamity, so hopefully you could effectuate change. But we're going to start from the 2nd chapter, 6th verse of book of Amos. All right.
Hallelujah. Here, Chief. Prince. Nasik. We're in the book of Amos. We are in the 2nd chapter, starting from verse 6. You said 6th chapter or 2nd chapter?
2nd chapter, 6th verse.
6th verse. Hallelujah. Thus saith Yehudah, for 3 transgressions of Israel, yea, for 4, I will not reverse it, because they sell the righteous for silver and the needy for a pair of shoes. That
right. We know about Joseph. That's the tie in between the Sidra we just read about Joseph being sold for 20 pieces. But go ahead. All right. Keep going.
Verse 7. That pant after the dust of the earth on the head of the poor, and turn aside the way of the humble, and a man and his father go on to the same maid to profane my holy name. And they laid themselves down.
Before we go there, that ties you off with Judah. So you got a little bit about Joseph being mistreated, and you read about Judah messing up in this area. And they're talking about 3 transgressions, then there's a 4th. We had this thing in the early part where 6 nations almost started charging with transgressions and say, yeah, you messed up 3 times, and then the 4th time, the Creator going to take care of you. And he mentioned 3 of those nations, and 2 of them is family members, that he mentioned. But then, and then the first one they mentioned really is from where Abraham is from. So, so we ain't the only one getting beat down, but it's about moral issues, not so much religious issues that Amos going to be talking about here. It's the moral issues that's involved here. All right, so we're going to pick it up right now from the 8th verse.
Verse 8 reads, and they laid themselves down beside every altar upon clothes, taken in pledge. And in the house of their God, they drink the wine of them that have been fined.
Right there. And that's something. Now, normally, you don't drink the wine, Now, when they talk about the wine in the house of God, when you make the humble, first of all, we're going to back up just a little bit and talk about when the humble go out the way. Make the humble go out the way. That means people be scared to do right because pressure, peer pressure. Some of us been around people like that, where they say, why you try to be so holy? Why you try to do this here? Everybody else ain't doing that. Why you got to do this here? Even sometimes, guys, when you first come into this way of life, or say, I'm going to start to serve God, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm going to stop doing this, I'm going to straighten my life out. Some people, will try to put peer pressure on you not to do that. So now, when we talk about drinking wine in the house of God, it's not about a ritual that's a problem, because we know when we during the Shalom Regalim, different feast times, we come and we enjoy all the stuff that we bring, those 3 times Shalom Regalim, in the property of the sanctuary. So drinking is not a problem in the holy area. Eating is not a problem in the holy area. What it is that the way you acquire these things to eat and drink and what you're doing with it, and that's what became the problem, because we know that you have certain produce, the tithe and stuff like that. You eat it at certain spots you eat in your gate. Sometimes you have shared amongst the poor, and certain things you bring and eat, where God chose the name to be, and you're going to drink. So that's what it's talking about here in Amos time, is the corruption that's going on within the house, and while people abuse and got the stuff that they attain through illicit gain. All right, I'll pick it up from there, 9.
Verse 9, it reads, "Yet destroy I the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars, and he was strong as the oaks. Yet I destroyed his fruit from above, and his roots from beneath."
So in other words, we couldn't beat the Amorites straight up. The Creator had to help us, and said they were some tall guys, and they wasn't tall and lanky. They was tall and what is that? The term they use, brolic, or
Brolic.
So
Brolic.
Diesel. Yeah. They look like, they could be in Mr. Universe or something like that. There, right. That's how they look. And said we can't whoop them up. We weren't that size, but the Creator said, "Look, I help you. I destroyed them." Go ahead.
Verse 10. "Also I brought you up out of the land of Egypt, and led you 40 years in the wilderness to possess the land of the Amorites.
Ain't that something? Cook on.
And I raised up of your sons for prophets, and of your young men for Nazarites. Is it not even thus, O ye children of Yisrael, saith Yehovah?"
In other words, look here. That I raised up people to be able to do things to help you out and give you some advice. I even raised people up where they could abstain and say, "Well, I'm ready if God want to call me to do something." So I had the prophets that he raised up there, and other people that volunteered to say, "Look, I want to be part of the service of the Most High." He said, I did all that. So it's eliminating the reason why we should mess up, because we have a lot of protection, and the people that's willing to go and protect us and speak up for us. That's why I talk about the prophets and talk about the Nazarites. All right, go ahead, pick it up 12 first.
Verse 12, "But you gave the Nazarites wine to drink, and commanded the prophets, saying, Prophesy not. Behold."
And that's something. Now we just read that in 7:14, and most prophets stopped. Jeremiah himself, a great prophet. Once they threw him, he said something, they threw him in the hole, in the dung pit. When they threw Jeremiah in the pit, and it had to be a Ethiopian, another strange outsider, pull him out. He wasn't going to say anything. He said, I'm through talking. These people is crazy. I'm through talking. But he stopped and said, it was like fire shut up in my bones. He had to bring out the word of the Creator. So Amos ain't going to even let that happen with him. Amos coming, straight up. We read about his resume. He said, "Look, I ain't nobody big. I ain't one that's set up like that." As we read, we started off, I'm not one of the prophets or the son of a prophet. I'm not even out that line. I said, my occupation is a shepherd. But I need to do too much talking about. But I need to move on a political scheme. That's not me. But I got the word, and I'm doing what God want me to do. Many of us should feel that same way, that we want to do what the Creator want to do. All right. So we're going to pick it up here from the 13th verse.
Verse 13, "Behold, I will make it creak under you, as a car creaketh that is full of sheaves. And flight shall fail the swift, and the strong shall not exert his strength. Neither shall the mighty deliver himself. Neither shall he stand that handleth the bow, and he that is swift of foot shall not deliver himself. Neither shall he that rideth the horse deliver himself. And he that is courageous among the mighty shall flee away naked in that day, saith Yehovah."
And that's something. Now, right then and there, said, no matter what skill you had before, it won't avail you when drama comes. Imagine, you're a warrior, you can't fight. Your horse, you can't get away in your horse. Say, look, I need some help. I'm trying to ride up out of this danger. And some people get so scared. They say the horse ain't fast enough. I'm gonna run. I was talking about just the sidebar, just a bit. We were talking about old Superman movies, with that guy Reeves and stuff like that from the old Superman
Christopher Reeves.
Yeah, Christopher Reeves. Yeah. So they say, a person got to be desperate that you shot a man with bullets and that didn't hurt. You throw the gun and hit him with the gun, that'll hurt him. And then you're going to go head on and punch him with your hands in the stomach. After you had the most expensive stuff, you had the bullets, it didn't work. The gun, you try to slug it with the gun, that didn't work. And you try to punch him, and that didn't work. That's desperation and foolery. That's what we're going through right here. And that's a classic example, because when I was younger, it was entertaining. But now that I got a little older, I see the foolery behind it and the desperation behind the individual. If your most powerful stuff don't work, what your fist gonna do? But just that people be strong and wrong. That's what we could sum it up with. But keep going, pick it up the third chapter.
Chapter 3. It reads, verse 1. Hear this word that Yehovah has spoken against you, O children of Yisrael, against the whole family which I brought up out of the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth, therefore I will visit upon you all your iniquities.
And it's said, in other words, I knew you. I mean, in other words, me and you had an acquaintance. If I know you, I mean, what the Creator don't know? That's what we need to ask first. What is that he had lacked knowledge in, the Creator? All right. When a lot of times, I heard a preacher one time when he was reading about the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. And when the angel said, that now I know, supposed to be in the person of the Creator. So now I know. And the preacher said, there's some things God don't know. I said, well, coming from that perspective, I guess in his realm, it maybe is a God that don't know some things. But the God that created the heavens and the earth and all that therein, there's nothing that he don't know except if there's another God. He said, I know not any. If there's any other Savior, I don't know not any. All right. So that's what we read in the prophecy about what he don't know. That if there's any other gods, he said, I don't know any. If there any other Savior, I don't know not any. But when it comes down to what goes on in this world, it's nothing beyond his knowledge. So I just brought that out just to make a difference. That if the Creator know us, that means that we have an intimate relationship with him, and like no other people. And he talk about what he did for us, and cared for us and brought us out of condition to enhance us. A lot of times, we keep going with third verse, you might help out.
Verse 3. Will two walk together except they have agreed? Will a lion roar in the forest when he hath no prey? Will a young lion give forth his voice out of his den if he have taken nothing?
All that means no. All right. You ain't walking together unless you got something in common. A lion ain't gonna roar, you know what I mean? If he had nothing to eat, because he's stalking. All right. And then, when you're talking about a young lion, the young lion is vulnerable. So he didn't want to give away his position while he's in the den. So they're gonna be quiet. All right. But and says the fifth verse.
Verse 5 reads, will a bird fall in a snare upon the earth where there is no lure for it? Will a snare spring up from the ground and have taken nothing at all? Shall the horn be blown in a city and the people not tremble? Shall evil befall a city and Yehovah have not done it?
All right, ain't that something? Now, that means that when it says the Creator have not done it, all right, he allows certain things to go down. All right. And when they allowed to go down, and I always have to go back to this Exodus, the Passover thing. I always like to bring that out. It's because I hear so often that brothers say about the death angel killing all the firstborn and stuff like that. And I find that to diminish the scope and the power and the care of the Creator when we talk about the death angel coming through on Passover and doing this and doing that. We read clearly that the Creator said, when I see the blood on the up and the two side posts, I will not suffer the destroyer to come in and get you as Israelites. We read where the death angel stood over Jerusalem, to deal with Israelites. But when it came down to Egypt, the Creator took that personal. That's why I said, in a sense, I know you. So we the only people on record could say our God actually won a battle for us and did this and did that for us. Other people do their own work, their own battles, and then they thank their God for something that God didn't do, which is a completely different. And then it goes on to say that when we said 7th verse.
Verse 7 reads, "For the Lord Yehovah will do nothing, but he revealeth his counsel unto his servants, the prophets. The lion have roared."
All right, before you go to the last verse. All right. This is often quoted by a lot of people. "For the Lord God will do nothing, but he revealeth his counsel unto his servants, the prophets." A prophet is a spokesperson, not predicting the future. He just says what he was told to say. Almost later on, and within this book, it's called a koseah, which is a seer. A term that's not often used in reference to a nabi. We know right then and there that the Creator gave us warning so that we could change and try to straighten our life out. And the last verse, let's go through the last verse.
Verse 7 reads.
No, 8.
Verse 8, my bad, sorry. "The lion have roared, who will not fear? The Lord Yehovah hath spoken, who can but prophesy?" Hallelujah.
So I'm almost saying that even before you get to that last part in the book, before you get to the last part, the latter part, when I just read, opening it up concerning Amos, the other people might shut their mouth. About, the situation, with, other guys that don't want to prophesize and get scared straight where they won't say a word, or, about false prophets and all that kind of stuff. But Amos is during the time just before the northern kingdom going to captivity, during the time of Jeroboam II. And so he's destroying actually the house of Yehu and everything. So that when we talk about the Creator giving us warning, a lot of us don't want to hear the warning. And what's interesting that when we read the story about Wayeshev, and we read about the story about Joseph and read about the story of Yehudah, Amos is coming against both the northern and the southern kingdom, but the southern kingdom survived it, as the northern kingdom didn't survive at this particular time. And we know that the tie-in is about, we say, well, I'm not only going to bring out certain moral issues about your ancestors, I'm going to bring about some stuff that you haven't learned today, talking about the people of his particular time and about the drama you got to face. So when we look at everything in the book of Amos and his fearlessness of how he spoke, sometimes we got to come out of our comfort zone to speak. And when we go into the Hanukkah story, which those that haven't listened to everything that Chief Ul said, I like to urge you to listen to it, because that is a lot of strong history that we need, whether we observe Hanukkah or not, which means in dedication. That's what it means, dedication. And it's dedicating the temple, but it should be more dedicating the people. And one of the things we just think about the rededication of the temple, and the reason they say the rededication of the temple more so because we know that normally they didn't get a chance to observe Sukkot.
Right.
And so it reminisces Sukkot later on in history. And this is not the first time we had a dedication that lasted 8 days. And we went during King Hezekiah time, they talking about a rededication that it took 8 days to purify when they was talking about Passover. So, and when we come through Sukkot, we're supposed to be actually a rededicated people because we just passed Yom Kippur. So, and we talking about rededication, it's not the building, it's rededicating ourselves and dedicating ourselves to the service of the Creator. So I hope you got something out of what I said. Any mistakes been my own, and you can always leave a comment one way or the other if that's something I didn't explain well. And I hopefully came across where most people understood what I said. Amen.
I have a question, Nasik. A couple of questions.
Okay.
In reference to Parashat Wayeshev. Does God ever speak directly to Yosef as he spoke to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? Does he ever speak to any of Yaakov's children? If so, where, when, and why? If not, in your opinion, why doesn't he?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I know it's a loaded question. I don't know if
Yeah. Well, one, I'm gonna answer the first one, which is the easiest part.
Right.
All right. There's nowhere in the scriptures, that the Creator has spoke to any of the patriarchs of the tribes. Nowhere written there in that area there.
Right.
And, and what sometimes when people say God reveals certain things to them, or give them, and they're able to see certain things, they ascribe it to God because they understand exactly how this thing should play out. And what I was trying to say, and go next time, since you brought the question up, I'll bring this out now. In reference to Yosef 2 dreams, and I'll probably maybe touch on it a bit next time, is that when he was talking about wheat, in the first dream that we read about, that he actually explained out the 3 dreams that he had, that the first time we're going into Egypt is about wheat. It's about food, and so all they know is that they don't know that, they know we're working, we know it's about grain, we know it's about eating, but the correlation they see is that somebody's an authority and we submitting to somebody else, and we look like we the same, because they got a bundle of wheat and we got a bundle of wheat, but our wheat laying down. So we came down as, begging for food. All right. The second part, we come down as viceroys of the state. When Jacob come down himself, that's when Jacob come down, not when Judah come back. When Jacob come down, then they come in as VIPs, hence the stars up in heaven. Joseph didn't even understand the dream. He only remembered the dream when he seen them showing up. So I hope I didn't blow anybody's thing, but Joseph only remembered the dream. He didn't even think, give it another thought until them brothers showed up to buy the wheat.
Do you think that Yosef was naive, and after he gave the first dream, that he reiterated the second dream to his family?
Well, Joseph
was it done with purpose? Did he understand the interpretation of the dreams? The meaning and the interpretation?
No. He understood the interpretation of superiority. He understood that clearly. And that was the easy part. And he never said it was wrong. And the brothers understood the interpretation of a superiority. So that was clear cut. But they couldn't see how he's superior to us other than a father loving him more in that area. And Joseph, like I said, only remember the dream after the brothers show up, because he never had an idea. And we read that his father, Jacob, said, I'm going to observe the saying, because he couldn't figure out how this is going to even play out. So that's the difference between the dreams that Joseph had. As far as interpretation, the brothers were able to interpret, but outside of Isaac and Jacob, Joseph's the next only brother, only one out the family that had a dream. Nobody else you read about had dreams that's spoken of in scripture, and the dreams supposed to play a part in his role. So, and as far as one thing I spoke on earlier is that Joseph himself, the beginning of that Sidra, he brings an evil report. What happened with him? he had an evil report brought out against him concerning his master's wife. And look, it appears like he might have had something going on because his coat was there. It might have looked and appeared because we think of evil, like, wow, this is really intense. So when he brought out evil report, the evil report is that he could have misjudged his brothers, just like he was misjudged. Right. Jacob, and I always had this thing in scriptures, measure for measure. So he had to undergo certain things. He was in the coat that got him looking superior got snatched off him. He wound up getting thrown in the pit. The coat that he had looked royal in the house, that got snatched off him, and he thrown in the pit. He depended on the butler for his salvation instead of depending on the creator. But yet he said God would give him an interpretation of the dream. And so he said, and then he said, I will interpret it, but then he want the butler to remember him and not the creator to remember him in his conditions. When the creator was recognized by the master and was recognized by the warden, but Joseph didn't recognize the creator in his life.
Another question. In the story of Joseph, why do the brothers need to lie concerning the blood-stained coat to trick their father to believe that an animal ate or tore their brother up, right? Why didn't they just say, we didn't see him, and just left it as that, and he just would have been a missing case?
If a guy's missing, just like they was missing, Joseph went looking for them. So need to go find them. And I hate to go ahead of the story somewhat, but just most people might say, well, we go back over it again, look at it tighter. But Yehudah himself, when he just going just a little ahead, when Yehudah in one of my favorite discussion citrus, YAH,
when he steps up,
yeah, well. He says that the brother, that this guy's younger, talking about Benjamin, pleading for Benjamin, but he said the other brother is dead. But before that, the first time when Simeon was captured, they said that the other brother, he is not. We don't know where he at.
He's not, right.
So in other words, why this change from, we don't know where he at to a guy's dead? Because you might say, bring him out. So hence, they let Yaakov draw his own conclusion. They never actually told their father, according to the book, that he was dead. They sent the garment by somebody else in the book. And when they sent it by somebody else in the book, Yaakov brought out this scenario. But we don't even hear about Isaac involved in that, but yet we know Isaac was alive during this time. Even though when I brought out last time that though they buried Isaac, Yaakov's, 120, Esau's 120. And, he goes in front and finds Joseph at 130, 10 years later. So you figure Joseph is already, going 12 years from the last Sidra. I'm not going in any chronological order. So that's a time pass, and when we talk about the season, it's time passing.
How long was Joseph in Egypt before they rediscovered him? 20 years?
22 years, basically.
22 years. So it's almost the same period of time that
Jacob
was with Laban. And so do you feel like there is because I feel like there's a theme in the life of Yaakov, right? It feels like the one act that he did, because prior to that, you don't hear much about Yaakov, right? But him being born, his mother favoring him a little bit more than and the father favoring Esau. But then the act that he committed in deceiving his father into thinking that he was Esau, it seems somehow like he's paying for this like tenfold in his life, because like now your children are deceiving you. In the situation with Shechem, he makes a deal, and Simeon and Levi take it upon themselves to go do what they're going to do. And this situation right here with Yosef, it seems like his sons are also deceiving him. It just seems like it's so many things happening to him, so much more happening to him, and him just where people will look at it and say, well, he did just one thing, but it seems like a million things are happening to him. What's your take on that?
Okay, well, I'm one of the sticklers for measure, right. And it might not seem like a balance in that area, but when you show favor, he repeated a problem that his family repeated. Like I said, sometimes we don't get straight for 4 generations.
Right.
So now you're showing a favoritism to a son, all right, and you make him a coat, but don't make the rest of them a coat. And you put him over the handmaidens' children, but yeah, you call them your wives, all right, and in a supervisory capacity. And not only that, you kept him closer to you, even though Benjamin, and say, because he was a son of his old age, a son of, I mean, he was old when he had some age when he got the first one, Reuben. He wasn't no young guy. He wasn't no young whippersnapper. So you figure the most they're going to be is like 7 years apart between Joseph and Reuben. The most in the age is going to be about 7 years apart. Because he wanted to go after Rachel had a child, Joseph, and he would work 6 more years for the cattle. So the most is going to be like maybe 7 years apart between Reuben and Joseph. So so when we look at the thing that happened amongst the children is that he set a stage of favoritism. He didn't try to address the issue, between the brothers and stuff like that, knowing that it was a problem. He could recognize it, because I brought out earlier that he recognized the continence of his father-in-law that wasn't the same towards him. So you mean somebody's around the house, you can't see that they got issues, and they said they won't speak to him peacefully. So how much talk could go around? So those areas there, it's like not handling the issue at all. And then Yaakov himself, not really slow, and he's actually slow in doing this thing. And I'm thinking of it, so I don't want to forget it. Some sister asked about why did Yaakov didn't go get the bones of
Rachel. Shalom.
And there was enough room for one 2 people. That's number one.
Repeat that. So sister asked why didn't he go get the bones of Rachel, right?
Yes.
Right.
When he got settled, we got a little bit more settled, on that way. But he marked the spot, and what's interesting is that the spot that's actually marked is on her son's territory. That belongs to the tribe of Joseph. So the actual spot, and so where the prophets could actually use, I think in the book of Jeremiah, if I'm not mistaken, where it says Rachel's weeping for her children, and the Creator was entreated for Rachel, and he said, well, why she's able to weep for her children? One, she had a child and gave up her life to have this child. Her life was taken when she was bringing life into the world. 2, this is the only one of the 12 that was born in the land. And 3, that she was coming from that area.
Right.
And the thing is that if it was good, she would have stayed there. Now you're bringing her baby back into the area as a captive. So that's why out of all the matriarchs, and there's always a lot of commentaries in reference to that situation too, but out of all the matriarchs, you figure out Mother Leah, she couldn't plead on that level. The handmaidens could not plead on that level. Only one could plead on that level to go across back over in the place where Abraham was from, where Jacob was at, and where the other 11 tribes was at, that they want to be back on this side, is Raquel, who had a son that's actually born on this side. It's where she died at, as a landmark. So, you know, it became a landmark, you know, of not going back across. So we have 2 landmarks pretty much now. One is the stones that Laban and Yaakov set up, and also the burial spot of Raquel, of the only member of the tribe, the nation of Israel that was born in the land.
Hallelujah. Torah about Nasik for another insightful lesson in highlighting of Haftarah Wayeshev. Thanking the Most High God for your life once again. May the Most High God bless you.
All right, thanks. And any mistakes been my own, you know, and sorry for the time.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.